morning, dear teacher and my dear friends. As instructed by you, 5 of my friends and I are representing the class 7S4 is here in this platform to do a presentation on the topic Landscapes of Sri Lanka. The presenters are, as you can see below, myself, Kevin Adrian, presenting the hilly region of Sri Lanka, Anishka Jayasuriya, presenting the wet zone, Vidul Ranasinghe, presenting the dry zone, Linet Jayasinghe, presenting the coastal belt, and finally, Chris Fernando, presenting the Jaffna Peninsula. First, I will be presenting the landscape of the hilly region. As you can see on the Sri Lankan map on the left side, the hilly region of Sri Lanka is situated in the center of Sri Lanka. The lands located in 300 meters above the sea level are called the hill country or up country of Sri Lanka. The hilly region landscapes are mainly found in central hills and subragamo hills of the country. Average annual temperature of the region is 16 degrees Celsius. Average rainfall is 5,000 millimeters. The region is mostly covered with tea plantations, and this is unique to the region. Beautiful hills and mountains are home to some of the country's most unique and historic accommodations. Now let's see some main physical features of the hilly region. Mountain ranges are one of the most important physical features of the hilly region. What is a mountain range? A series of mountains arranged in a line and connected by high grounds is called a mountain range. Knuckles, Adams Peak, Pidrutalagala, Haputale, Dolasbage, and Namunukula mountains are some of the mountain ranges of the hilly region. Next, we'll see what are passes or called gaps. The low-level opening located in a highland or among the peaks of the mountains is called pass or a gap. Balana, Elle, Valimada, Balangoda, and Galgedera are some of the passes situated in the central hills. Plateaus. An area of flat land at a high elevation can be seen like a stage on top. That is known as a plateau. Candy Plateau, Hatton Plateau, Horton Plateau, Coastlander Plateau, and Valimada Plateau are some of the main plateaus of the hilly region. Waterfalls are also one of the major physical features of the hilly region. Rivers that flow across steep slopes form waterfalls. Lakshapana, Ramboda, Bamarakanda, Dunhinda, Devon, and Baker's Falls are some of the main waterfalls of the hilly region. Now let's see some main human features of the central hills. Tea cultivation and tea factories, vegetable, fruit and flower cultivation, livestock farming mainly for dairy products, large groups of workers and workers' houses, cultural inheritance of state workers. Developed road systems comprise a network of roads with plenty of bends due to the constant geographical dissimilarities, houses built on slopes, constant arrival of foreigners and locals to the region to enjoy the climate and the scenic beauty, hotels, tourist bungalows, and areas for recreational activities are prominent for the purpose of catering the visitors. Now let's see some related facts of the hilly region. The hilly region has a much complex physical landscape compared to the other regions. The region around Haputale, Bandaravela and Elle is colloquially known in Sri Lanka as the Health Triangle due to the crisp, fresh air available in here. Due to its location, the sceneries are picturesque. Clouds break to incredible views down to the plains below, especially on the very southern edge of the hills. Hilly region is most famous for its tea and coffee cultivations. The abundant rainfall combined with sunshine, cold nights and mists offer the perfect climate for producing high-grown aromatic teas. So, the world-famous industry Ceylon tea was born in here. The cool climate provides a beautiful contrast with the often blazing coastline. And finally, let's see some special facts and attractions of the hilly region. The total population of the hilly region is approximately 902,000 persons. Majority of the population earns their living by working on tea plantations. Pool Bank Tunnel. The longest railway tunnel of Sri Lanka is situated in Hatton and Kottagala. This tunnel is 562 meters long. Pattipola, the highest railway station in Sri Lanka with an elevation of 1,897.5 meters high above the main sea level, is in this region. The famous nine-arc bridge called Demodara Bridge is located in between Ella and Demodara. The famous 18-bend road called the Hatavangua, which is known as the most dangerous road in Sri Lanka, is located in Kandy Mahayangana Peradeniya Highway in the central Highlands. Haggala Botanical Garden, the most beautiful botanical garden of Sri Lanka, is located in this region, in the Badulla Norelia main road. And that is the end of my segment of this presentation. Next, I invite my dear friend Anishka Jayasuriya to do his presentation on the wet zone. Over to you, Anishka.
Thank you, Kevin. So I'm Anishka Jayasuriya and I will be taking you through the landscape of the wet zone. The Adura Oya and River Walave are the demarcations for the wet zone. These rivers separate the wet zone from the dry zone. Landscape features that can be seen mainly around in areas such as Western Province, Colombo, Gampaha Kalutara, Southern Province, Mathara Gaul, Sabaragamuwa Province, K Gaul, Ratnathura, Eastern slopes of Central Hills, Nuwara and Kandy. In the wet zone, the landscape tends to change constantly due to heavy rains and frequent flooding. This is caused by the southwest monsoon that the country obtains from the months of May to June and rare generation as a result of cyclones in the months of October, November and December. Moving on to the next slide. Well, this slide captures most of the significant landscape features that you can see in the wet zone. Flatlands. These are relatively flat and lower lands which most of us have built our houses on. Ridges. Mountain ridges belong to the hill country. Yet it is observed in the wet zone as well as most parts of the hill country too belong to the wet zone. Moving on to the next slide. Now we will discuss about the rivers and the rainfall. Many rivers are located within the wet zone. 3 out of the 4 main rivers, which are Kalani, Kalu and Walave, and other rivers such as Mahoya, Bentada River, Ginganga and Nilwalaganga are in the wet zone. Frequent rainfall keeps the rivers flowing throughout the year. Rivers like Kalani, Walave, Kalu, Nilwala and Ging are subjected to frequent flooding. This results in depositing smooth and rich soils in river valleys. Hence, the lands are easily converted to rich farmlands for cultivation. Marshlands with mangroves. Acres of marshy and wetland with mangroves can be found mostly around the coastal area of the wet zone. Muthurajavela wetland, that is of 7,580 acres, is well noticeable due to its unique and high diverse ecosystem. The Gamba Lagoon is also another remarkable wetland, which is full of mangroves that is located in the wet zone. Tropical wet forest. Sri Lanka's last viable, relatively undisturbed tropical rainforest, the Sinharaja. The Singharaja is also located within the wet zone. 60% of trees and plants found here is considered to be endemic and rare. It is home for over 50% of endemic species that falls into the categories of mammals, butterflies, insects, reptiles, and rare amphibians. Singharaja is also named as a World Heritage Site by the UNESCO. Rich vegetation cover. Bird zone has a rich soil due to its diverse climate and frequent floods. Coconut cultivation is common along the coastal belt, and Coconut Triangle, which includes cities such as Colombo, Kurunegala, and Putlam. Paddy are cultivated in both Yala and Mahakanda, mainly in areas such as Gampaha, Kurunegala, and Kalutara. Kalani Valley is famous for Korotu plantations that encourage many Korotu vegetables such as red gourd, wing beans, ladies' fingers, long beans, and so on. Rubber is an export produce, and rubber cultivation can be seen mainly in areas such as Colombo, Kalutara, Gampaha, Matale, Ratnapura, and Kurunegala districts. Tea is also an export produce and can be seen in most low elevation areas of the wet zone, which are Gaul and Ratnapura. Moving on to the next slide. So now I'm going to discuss about the human activities that is most found in the wet zone. A higher share of the export cultivation apart from tea is produced in the wet zone. Nearly 30% of country's land belongs to the wet zone. 60% of Sri Lanka's population lives in the wet zone. Most cities in the wet zone, for example, Colombo, Gampaha, Gaur, Kurunegala, are economic hubs. Many industries are concentrated around these cities. Examples: Negombo, fisheries, Ratnapura, gem mining, industrial and free trade zones such as Katnayaka, Viyamakrama, Koggala, Ekala has made these areas to be highly populated as most of the people have come to town in search of job opportunities. As a backup for the industrial boom, many infrastructure facilities such as the road network, overhead bridges, railway lines have developed in the wet zone. Recent development of the highway network connecting the economic capital Colombo and southern part of the country is a good example. The wet zone of Sri Lanka is well nourished with service-related facilities such as the presence of private and government banks, healthcare sector, many shopping complexes, and furthermore. Moving on to the next slide, human activities that damage the environment in the wet zone. Life in the wet zone is often busy and intense. Therefore, most of the time, people tend to overlook the environment, thus cause severe damage to its landscape. Filling marshy lands to build houses and buildings as the land in the wet zone is a scarce resource. This will disturb the natural drainage system and biodiversity as well. Deforestation is also another harm that we see in this wet zone. Cutting forests will disturb the natural rain cycle, resulting in droughts that will harm all cultivation and farming activities. Unlimited gem and clay mining will result in landslides and sudden building sinks. Scarcity of land will result in existence of shanties and slums. Having unplanned buildings and development everywhere will lead to lack of planned drainage system, increasing the threat of flood. Higher population and higher industrial activities result in a thumping load of garbage. Disposal of industrial and domestic waste to rivers has resulted in water pollution. So these are some of the harmful human activities that happen in the wet zone. We all live in the wet zone. Its landscape is a box of treasure. Therefore, it is our duty to harness it properly and nurture it for future generations too. So this is the end of my presentation on the wet zone. I would like to invite my friend Vidul to comment his area of the dry zone. Over to you, Vidul.
Thank you, Anishka. Hello, I'm Vidul. Today I am going to discuss another topic, the landscape of the dry zone. What is the dry zone in Sri Lanka, you may ask? This region could be introduced as the area where the Sri Lankan civilization began. The earliest human civilization in our country was associated with rivers and streams of the dry zone. Landscape of the dry zone can be seen north, north central, east and southeast region of the country. Moving on to the next slide. Physical features of the dry zone can be classified as high temperature, residual hills, trees with tall trunks, thorny bushes, rivers that run dry in drought, long plains, and low rainfall. Residual hills. The mountains remained after subjected to various erosion agents for a long time are known as residual hills. Rivers. Rivers in the dry zone run dry during a certain period of the year. Almost all the tanks in Sri Lanka is in the dry zone. Ancient Sri Lanka had the best irrigation system in the world. Special landscape feature. Sanctuaries Yala, Vilpattu, Kumana. Forest reserves Vasgamuwa, Maduroya, Somavati. Moving on to the next slide. Human features of the dry zone can be classified as Chena cultivation, paddy cultivation, religious centers, plant farm settlements, tanks built by blocking rivers. Religious centers. Religious centers, frequently visited by people, is also a significant feature of this landscape. Sacred Sri Mabadi and stupas at Anuradhapura, Mother Church at Manna, Kauneshwaram Hindu Temple at Trincomalee, Kirivihara and Skanda Kumar Devale at Khataragamaya, mosques in the eastern region. Tanks built by blocking rivers. The tanks built by blocking the rivers that flow through the small ridges are also prominent in this landscape. The invention of the whale pit, which was done to these rigid tanks, was a major point for the development of ancient Sri Lanka's irrigation system. Most of them are fed by rainwater and the water of river Mahavali. A large land area of the dry zone is utilized for paddy cultivation under irrigation. Rice mills and industries producing rice flour products have been established associated with the paddy cultivation. Moving on to the next slide. Chena cultivation. Chena is regarded as the oldest form of cultivation in Sri Lanka, extending as far back as 5,000 years in Sri Lankan history. Chena cultivation was a traditional practice and ancient Sri Lankans ensured that the environment was unharmed in the process. The technique used to cultivate a Chena depended on a range of variables, including the climate, nature of soil, as well as other environmental and topological factors of the area. Chena cultivation in Sri Lanka was mainly practiced by men. However, women and children also extend their aid in various ways such as protecting crops from raiding birds and animals. Paddy cultivation. A kumbura or kether is the land on which farmers cultivate paddy. Rice is the staple food of Sri Lanka, and as such, paddy cultivation in Sri Lanka is given utmost importance in the agriculture industry. Ancient and traditional farmers were self-sufficient in rice production, and ancient Ceylon is said to have been among the foremost paddy exporters in the world. Moving on to the next slide. Special facts. The landscape of the dry zone is set on the following factors: severe drought, high temperature, uncertain and low rainfall, high evaporation. There were 3 historical kingdoms located in the dry zone: Anuradhapura, Sigiriya, Polonnaruwa. Sri Lanka's dry zone occupies 3/4 of the total island's land area. It was here, partially in the northern parts, that the first Sinhalese established an advanced civilization during the first millennium of the Christian era. With that, I am concluding my part of this presentation on the landscape of the dry zone. Now, I am handing over the platform to my friend Lineth to do the presentation on the coastal belt. Over to you, Lineth.
Thank you, Vidul. Good morning, dear teacher and friends. I am Lina. Today I am going to present about the landscape of the coastal belt of Sri Lanka. Sri Lankan coastal line is characterized by many picturesque features that contribute considerably to the coastal livelihood. The length of the coastal belt is 1,338 kilometers, and including the lagoon shoreline, it is 2,791 kilometers. A human landscape built on this physical landscape can also be seen. Now, let's see the significant features of the coastal belt. Islands, bays, points or headlands, lagoons, marshy lands, delta, estuary or rivers, sand dunes. Moving on to the next slide. Island. An island is a small land area surrounded by the water. There are many islands located in the west and southwestern side of the Jaffna Peninsula. Mana, Hill, Heights, Mandathi, Kunkudathi are some of the examples. And Mena Island is the largest island in Sri Lanka. Bay. What is meant by a bay? Sea caved into the land, create an area filled with seawater is known as a bay. Examples are Arugam Bay, Waligama Bay, Calcutta Bay, Dutch Bay, Portugal Bay, Trincomalee Bay. And it is also known as Kodiar Bay, where the Trincomalee harbour is situated, and it is the fifth largest natural harbour in the world. Moving on to the next slide. Lagoon. Simply, a lagoon is a water-filled area covered by two land stripes separated from the sea. Negombo, Woodland, Jaffna, Kovgilai, Kilali, Chilau, Nayaru, and Batiklo are some lagoons, for example. Now let's see what is a headland or point. A land area with hard stone that protrudes towards the sea is known as a headland. Examples: Dondra Head, Fowl Point, Sangamankanda Point, and Point Pedro. Moving on to the next slide. Marshy land. What is defined as marshy land? A marsh is a type of wetland, an area of land where water covers ground for long periods. Unlike swamps, which are dominated by trees, marshes are usually treeless and dominated by grasses and other herbaceous plants. Delta or estuary. The estuary is an area where salt water of sea mixes with fresh water of rivers. It is formed by a tidal bore. Delta is a low triangular area of alluvial deposits where a river divides before entering a larger body of water. It is the funnel-shaped mouth of a river where tides move in and out. Example, Putlam Estuary. The coastal sand dunes. Coastal sand dunes form where a beach is big enough to allow the sand to completely dry out between high tide, and where there are onshore winds to blow the dry sand landward, and sand is then trapped by dune grasses, which grow through the accumulating layers of hard inorganic sand. Moving on to the next slide. HIKKADUWA National Park. Do you know that the HIKKADUWA National Park is one of the 3 marine national parks in Sri Lanka? Well, the national park contains a shrinking coral reef of high degree of biodiversity. The area was declared a wildlife sanctuary on May 18, 1979, and then on August 14, 1988, was upgraded to a nature reserve with extended land area. The growth of the number of visitors in the next 25 years was increased the degradation of the coral reef. To reduce the effects to the ecosystem, the reef was declared as a national park on September 19, 2002. Moving on to the next slide. Now let's see the limestone and fishing industry in the coastal belt. The most common place to find limestone is beneath the marine waters. Coral deposits are the raw materials traditionally used for limestone production. They are mainly in the southwestern and southern coastal belts. Example, HIKKADUWA. Fishing industry is very common all along the coastal belt of Sri Lanka. It plays an important role in Sri Lanka's social and economic sector. And the country is home to a large fisheries community who reside along the coastal line. Today, Sri Lanka has emerged as a quality fish and seafood exporter. The major exporter destinations of Sri Lankan fish and fishery products were Europe and America. By exporting, Sri Lanka is earning nearly 40,000 to 50,000 million rupees per year. Now let's see how the coastal belt is damaged by human activities. Breaking of coral reef, removal of sand from the beach, fishermen using destructive fishing methods, illegal sand mining continues in the north long and the east coast of the Jaffna Peninsula from various sites is creating a negative environmental impact. Illegal dumping of domestic and industrial waste along the shore. And this will be the end of my presentation on the landscape of the coastal belt of Sri Lanka. And now I'm handing off the session to my friend Chris to continue with the landscape of the Jaffna Peninsula. Over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Lynette. Hello, my name is Chris Fernando, and I will be taking you through the landscape of the Jaffna Peninsula. These are some of the significant features of the Jaffna Peninsula: flatlands, lagoons, islands, sand sheets or sand dunes, rich red soil, and limestone soil. Now you will see images of limestone soil and sand sheets. Moving on to the next slide. Now I will be talking about the main features of the human landscape. This region does not receive rainfall from the main types of rain. Hence, physical landscape as well as human landscape are built on factors like low rainfall, high temperature, and high evaporation rate. Well-developed agro-land utilization using sweep wells from the past and pumping of water at present is the main feature in the human landscape. Vegetables like potatoes, chilies, red onions, beetroot, and fruits like grapes, mango, and banana are grown in farms maintained with groundwater. These are two pictures of pumping of water and a sweeper. Coastal fishing industry, handicraft industry, and producing salt, which are carried out using the resources in the region, are characteristics of the human landscape. Abundance of palmyra palm and using them for day-to-day activities is a main feature of this region. Roofs thatched with palmyra fronds and fences covered with palmyra fronds, food produced associated with palmyra, and goods produced using palmyra palms are common here. Now you will see a picture of roofs thatched with palmyra fronds and a fence covered with palmyra fronds. Moving on to the next slide. These are some of the fruits and vegetables grown in Jaffna: beetroot, chilies, potatoes, red onions, bananas, grapes, and mangoes. Moving on to the next slide. Features like Hindu temples, religious festivals, processions, as well as devotees are a part of this culture based on Hindu religion. This is a picture of the Nallur Kovil. The coastal areas are suitable for bathing and diving located around the mainland and island. The eastern coast bird sanctuary at Chundikulam and Nainativu have made this region a tourist zone. Nagadeepa Purana Vihara is an ancient Buddhist temple situated on the island Nainativu in Jaffna. This is a picture of the Nagadeepa Purana Vihara. With that, we conclude our presentation. We would like to thank Nilakshi teacher for giving us this opportunity to do the presentation, and also our dear parents for all the help, support, and guidance provided. And thank you all my dear friends for listening in. Have a wonderful day and may God bless you all.
Good morning, my dear friends. Today we are going to learn about the landscape of Sri Lanka. This presentation is made by the class 7S3. Content. Here we have titles as Introduction, Coastal Region and Jaffna Peninsula, Dry Zone, Wet Zone, and Hill Country. The introduction is made up with Ocean de Silva. The coastal region and Jaffna Peninsula is made up with Dinod Mallavarachi. The dry zone is made up with Nadil Pereira. The wet zone is made up with Ocean de Silva. The hill country is made up with Dylan de Cruz. Ocean.
Landscape of Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is an island located in the Indian Ocean with a land area about 60,000 5,600 610
65,610 square kilometers.
kilometers. Within this land area, diverse landscapes can be seen. They are different from each other and consist of various physical and human features. Classification. Process of classifying something or a category is known as classification. We can classify our country in different ways such as zonic, district-wise, provincially, administratively. Hill Country by Dylan D. Cruz. Over to you, Dylan.
Thank you, Nadir. I'm Dylan and I will be telling y'all some information about the hill country. First, I will be telling about the Central Hills. I think y'all might be knowing the height in the Central Hills is about 300 meters above the sea level. Landscape of the hilly region. Plateaus. For example, for plateaus, we could take as Horton Plains. For gaps, we can take as Eller Gaps. Pass. Mountain ranges. For mountain ranges, we can take an example as the Knuckles Mountain Range, and for waterfalls, the St. Clair's Waterfall. Flora and fauna. For flora, there's a very rare flower which could be found. It's red redbud. And there's a wide population in fauna too. For example, we could take as a samba deer.
Can be seen in the southwestern part of the country with a high rainfall annually. 33 specific soil series were identified in this zone. A diversity of agricultural land use can be seen in the wet zone as rubber and tea plantation. Wet zone is well developed from human feathers and too. The free trade zone (EPZ) are also located mainly in this zone. In the wet zone, there are tropical evergreen forests with tall trees, broad leaves, and a dense undergrowth of vines and creepers. Moving on to the next slide. Feathers of the wet zone. Human feathers, commercial cities, cultivation of tea, developed transportation, rubber cultivation. From natural feathers, rivers flowing throughout the year, marshy lands, rich vegetation, trees with heavy-duty strength, forest. Moving on to the next slide. Records in the wet zone. Here are some records in the wet zone. Highest population, highest number of commercial cities, capital's location, highest rainfall, highest rubber cultivation, highest urbanization, and largest marshy land, Muthurajawala. From here, my presentation about wet zone. Over to you, Dinod.
Introduction. The zone which has the most number of dry seasons annually is known as the dry zone. Most of the southeast, east, northern parts of Sri Lanka is covered by the dry zone. This zone covers up to 3/4 of the island, which is approximately 54,000 square kilometers. It contains around 1/4 of the country's population too. There's an annual rainfall about 1,200 millimeters to 1,900 millimeters in this zone. Crystalline rocks, quartz, granite are mostly found in the soil of this area. Paddy is the leading crop in this area, which supports the national economy. One of the most precious treasures in the dry zone are the dry evergreen forests. These forests are made up with deciduous tropical trees. Most of them are thorny bushes. As an example to a thorny bush, willow is a lowland thorny bush plant. These dry evergreen forests are a great support for the living of the largest land vertebrate, the elephant. About 6,000 elephants' habitat is this dry zone in Sri Lanka. Therefore, we can consider that dry zone is a most precious, important zone in Sri Lanka. So here we are going to talk about the features of the dry zone. When we look at the human landscape, Chena cultivation, plant fan settlements, a major asset of irrigation, Buddhist religious beliefs are some of the human landscape. Natural landscape, tanks, residual hills, hardwood plains are some of the natural landscape features. Records in the dry zone. Highest number of historical cities. Highest number of protected national parks. Highest number of elephants in Asia. Most rice having zone. Highest rice cultivation. Beginning of civilization. Largest national park, the Vilpattua National Park.
Good morning, everybody. Let's let's get some knowledge about the coastal belt in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is a beautiful island. There is an attractive coastal belt all around the country. You can see it clearly in this picture. Let's move on to the next slide. Number 1, islands. Island is a land surrounded by water. Delf, Kites, Nagadeep, Manna. In the northwest and Great Bases and Little Bases in the southwest are some of the islands. Number 2, bays. Bay is a sea caved into the land and create an area filled with sea. For example, Arugamba, Valigama and Trincomalee and Dutch Bay. Number 3, lagoons. Water-filled area covered by 2 land strips and separated from sea by a sand reef is known as lagoon. For example, Negombo, Puttlam and Jaffna Lagoon. Number 4, points or headlands. This is known as a land area with hard stone that protrudes towards sea. Sangamankanda, Dondrahead are some of the points. Number 5, estuary or delta. Delta is a place where rivers enter to the sea. Number 6, marshy lands. Marshy lands can be seen in Muthurajawala as well as Negombo. Number 7, sand dunes. It is a hill of sand built by wind action. We can see sand dunes in Hambantota and Jaffna areas. Moving on to the next slide. Let's take a closer look about the features of the physical landscape.
Yes, Vinod.
Human landscape. Let's see the human activities mostly found in the coastal area. Number 1, coconut industry. Number 2, dry fish industry. Number 3, limestone industry and tourism. And tourism, then occupations related to the above industries are the economic activities. In this slide, we can see well about the human landscape. In coconut industry is well famous in Kurunegala, Puttlam and Colombo areas. Dry fish industry is famous in Mathara, Kalpiti and Manna. In areas like Puttlam, Manna, Jaffna and HIKKADUWA, limestone industry is famous. In Nilaveli Beach, HIKKADUWA Beach and Arugambia Beach is known beaches for tourism. There are more than 21 lighthouses in the coastal belt of our country. Some of them are Colombo Lighthouse, Point Pedro Lighthouse, Sandamankanda, Point Lighthouse. Next, it is about religious centers. As we talk about religious centers, Koneshwaram and Nagadeep are well-known religious centers in the coastal belt. Waligama, Nigambo and Manna are well-known for fishing industry. In the places like Puttlam and Hambantota, we could see the salt industry. Let's go to the next slide. Tourism industry is the most popular in the coastal belt of our country. Let's see what are the features that influence tourism. Whale and dolphin watching, diving, boat surfing, and attractive beaches are some of them. Let's see what is coastal vegetation. The most popular coastal vegetation is mangroves and mangrove shrubs. Other than that, algae, grasses, bacteria, and little amount of fungi. The advantage of coastal vegetation are prevent soil erosion, provide habitat for marine life, and provide raw materials for fishery equipment. Finally, let's see the adverse effects for the coastal belt by the activities of human and nature. Coral reefs being damaged by boats, building hotels, restaurants in the coast. Disasters like tsunami and cyclone are some of the examples. I think you would get a clear knowledge about the coastal belt of our country. Thank you.